What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
My priority, one, make sure that the 550,000 people without electricity, that they get it back. Second, make sure that all people isolated because of roads, that we repair those roads. It was done. And I think I did what I had to do.
That is Premier Legault today surfacing to discuss where he's been up until now and then to let us know that this is what he's been doing, part of what he's been doing. James Mennie is on the line over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, was this necessary? Did we learn anything new here today? I did what I did?
Not really. I mean, he was, I won't say he was dragged kicking and screaming, and to do a photo op, which is nothing more than this. To satiate the news-starved assignment editors in various newsrooms in Quebec, and as someone who virtually agrees with nothing François Legault has to say about anything whatsoever, I have to tell you, it's tough for me to pick holes in this. The triage was right. Get power back to the 500,000 customers, and when that really means basically 2 million people who had no light or air conditioning. Get the roads reestablished. One question that I think wasn't asked, and one that should be asked, and it's not just to François Legault, but everybody in government, at all levels of government, I don't know how many times we got to get kicked in the head, Aaron. I don't know how many times the writing has to be on our wall in our own homes to tell us it is time for a huge rethink of how we administer certainly urban areas. My big question is, and I know that people in St. Leo, it's no sympathy. They don't have the time for this. They're busy, trying to dry out their basement for the fifth time. But the fact of the matter is, we have an infrastructure in Montreal that is clearly insufficient. It's been insufficient for decades. And what's funny is, 30, 40 years ago, I was asking politicians back then, well, do you think you're going to, increase the capacity of the sewer? Yeah. But it's not sexy, so it's going to take a long time. Well, all those decades have gone by and nothing has changed. Sure. I mean, the reality is people are calling you up and their hearts are breaking, okay? Because nobody thought that, maybe we need a bigger pipe. Nobody thought that, maybe we should get a pumping system that doesn't conk out when it floods. This is something that we should all be focusing on. It's great that François Legault went out to Louisville, was with the mayor. Bring in the army. I can't bring in the army because there's only 12 people who need help over here, but, that's fine. And all the cameras were whirring and clicking, Aaron, but the fact is, if you want to be scared of something, and it doesn't matter if you don't live in the affected neighborhoods, because guess what? The next neighborhood that's going to be affected is going to be yours. This stuff is happening on almost weekly basis. Oh, it's a record rainfall. We've never seen this before. Actually, we did. We saw it 10 days ago. And I'm not, I'm not going to thump my chest here about climate change or whatever. Whatever is going on, and we have to deal with it. And going out and sort of like looking concerned, at a pile of wreckage by somebody's basement is not going to solve that. We have real problems here. And it's great to point the finger at Valerie Plante and say, well, it'd be her on a damn bike path. Well, maybe that's true, but the fact of the matter is somebody somewhere has got to start digging bigger sewers. Because I frankly am in a bit of a despair right now, Aaron, because I think you and I are going to spend way more time talking about flooding on the island of Montreal than we ever thought we would.
Jim, as I hear you say this, and we're going to hear from someone about urban planning and how we have to consider what's coming down the road. But I remember hearing this from a politician one time, this idea of spending money on infrastructure and how it's the least important part of what people remember when they go vote for somebody, for mayor, premier, whatever else. Yep. So number one, that's a problem politically. And number two, it is so expensive that administration after administration just kicks the ball down the road.
But I'm, I'm looking for a way to advance what you're saying. But what you're saying is quite literally the sad truth, Aaron. What you're saying is that, yes, when it happens, we're outraged. But the idea, and we're talking about a multi-billion, tens of billions of dollars to basically, dig this up and redo it. And don't forget, when you're digging it up, there's going to be traffic detours and so on and so forth. But the reality is we can't keep getting the crap kicked out of us every time we have yet another record-setting rainfall. This stuff is for real. There are people out there who can no longer get insurance. There are insurance companies that are wondering if they can still provide insurance. This past 2 weeks has shown us, more than any protest on the Jacques Cartier Bridge of people hanging banners, that something's going on, and all of us are going to have to get behind the idea of dealing with it, not stopping it, not by plugging everything in and saying everything's going to be fine, just by turning around, doing the simple stuff first. Honest to God, bigger sewers, for God's sake. It's not rocket science, but we have to admit that things have changed, not for the better, and no, they're not going back.
Can you imagine a politician running with that on their platform?
I know.
Bigger sewers.
I know.
Going to get a lot of votes, yeah. All right, let me move on and talk about it. We have Colin Standish on in about 15 minutes. So I read the story this morning in the Gazette, this meeting last night in Montreal West, this 11th province proposal. I'm curious. We didn't talk about this yesterday, I don't think, so I'm wondering what you make about this.
Well, it's not new. We've heard it before, right? If Quebec is divisible, if Canada is divisible, then so is Quebec. It's hardly new, the idea of forming an 11th province. I think you would find as much opposition to that from the current version of federal politics as you would from the most diehard separatists. The last thing, the Conservatives or the Trudeau Liberals are interested in doing is offending Quebec in any way, shape, or form, lest it might cost them a seat or not, or maybe, make them a bit less, drive them down a bit more in the polls. Because to do that, it's not impossible. Anything is possible. And the whole prospect of it scared the separatists so much that I think it was back in 2000. It was under the premiership of Lucien Bouchard. I believe it's Bill 99, and I love this. They say, the borders of Quebec, as established in the Federation of Canada, are sacrosanct and cannot be changed. And it's like, that's garbage. That's absolute nonsense. You want to change the entire border of the country. You want to take a big chunk, 1/10 of it, and pull it out with all kinds of territory and all kinds of resources. But when someone turns around and says, well, no, you can have your chunk, but we want to have this chunk over here. Now, all of a sudden, that's anathema, that is heresy, whatever. It's been said before, the thing about a Quebec separatist, it doesn't matter what generation is, they always think they can suck and blow at the same time. And that's simply not true. So, but all I'm saying is it's not impossible, but very unlikely in the current situation, because the last thing any federal politician of any political strife is concerned about is Quebec in general and Quebec's, or English Quebec in particular.
So I mentioned this particular party, right?
Yeah.
But there is something called the Future Canada Party. What the hell is this about?
They sound like, when I first saw the name, they sound like they could be wearing spacesuits. But I got to tell you, it talked about timing. A former New Brunswick cabinet minister and a conservative supporter from out west, from out in BC, the Canadian Future Party, it literally is kind of an orphanage for those political orphans, and there are a lot of them in this country who can't stand the so-called brand of liberalism of Justin Trudeau and can't stand the so-called, brand of conservatism of Pierre Poilievre. And they don't want either option. They think either option sucks. And here's this alternative, and it's so funny because they announced their existence yesterday. They're already running candidates in the two by-elections. So there's a guy named Mark Coury who's running for the Canadian Future Party in LaSalle, Amard, Verdun. Let's face it, he's going to be a magnet for protest votes if he gets out there and campaigns. I don't know the guy, but if he puts his back into it, who knows? Is he going to win? Maybe not, but I'll be interested to see how many votes he garners. But right now, Aaron, if there was ever a market for an alternative, if there was ever a market for Canadian taxpayers who are fed up of hearing the extremes on either side, who are fed up of having this yoke put around their shoulders and being dragged along into this kind of low-rent version of American politics that we're being dragged into right now. You're either for us or against. It's left or right. It's good versus evil. this is not what this country is about. What this country is about is certainly, as far as I'm concerned, it is not what's coming out of the mouths of Justin Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre. And maybe, you know what, there might be a home for these new parties. I'm not going to say they're going to form a government, but I'll be interested in seeing how many votes they garner on the 16th of September, I believe it is, because I don't know. I think a lot of people would be anxious rather than staying home, but to go out and vote, but just basically, how can I put it? Give a particular salute to the powers that be and say, no, I'm going to vote for these guys.
I'll tell you, it's funny, with respect to the by-election in Verdun, Namard, whatever, it seems to me, and I know this is obviously a federal by-election, I know people realize that, and I look at someone like a Craig Sauvé, who's been so entrenched in municipal politics. People know him, people like him, I think, for the most part, and I almost look at this as a municipal by-election where you're voting for the guy who lives in your neighborhood, who you know, and sort of pulling yourself away from considering that this is really for a federal seat. Do you buy into that at all?
Aaron, take the word municipal out of what you've just said, and how much of that doesn't make any sense? How much of that? He's likable. People know him. You're going to vote for him. It doesn't matter if he's going to be an MP or a councillor or a member of the National Assembly. The fact is, if you know the guy and you trust the guy, and he's going to come in and give you, and I'm saying this for all the candidates in this by-election, if they turn around and make that connection at that level, I don't really think it's going to make a whole heck of a lot of difference, especially with the rather, how can I put it, nebulous status right now of what is perceived to be a federal liberal stronghold in Montreal.
I wonder. Again, I'll let this go. I just think you end up voting for Craig Sauvé. I don't think you're necessarily seeing that he's wearing an NDP hat or wearing the NDP colors. You're voting for him. You're not voting for the party. We're saying the same thing.
And
right?
You know what? Yeah. Maybe it's high time that happened. Maybe it's high time we stripped off the goofy T-shirts and the labeling and the idea that whether it's conservatives or liberals, you have to agree with every utterance from the great leader, and you just go, you know what? I like this guy. I like the cut of his jib. He's talking to me. I think he's going to be a good MP or a good M&A or a good city councillor, and I'm going to vote for him or her. Simple as that. Imagine that. What a concept for Canadian politics.
What a concept indeed. James, thank you. Appreciate it.
Adamant.